Hey, Grampia Nation, coming back to you again as Grandpa chats with champions. And true to our word, this champion is a United States national champion Taekwondo and an instructor and author, lots of other cool stuff. Come on back and join me as we visit with Chris Natzke.
In 2013, I coined the name Grampian, and I gave it to your host, Jim Tracy.
Grampia Nation, we are back with Chris Natzke. Chris is from Denver, Colorado, and has a huge background. I mean, author, Taekwondo guy. There's just so many things. We're just going to dive right in. Chris, welcome to the show. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, Jim. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you so much. You hail from the Rocky Mountains. You're a Taekwondo champion, author, 8th degree black belt. And I don't have a deep grasp of this, but that sounds like a big deal.
Yeah. Within martial arts, it's a very high ranking black belt. Within the martial art of Taekwondo, there are 9 degrees of black belt. So,
oh, wow.
I've been training since the early 70s.
Son of a gun. That is getting up there. So, one of the things I read your book, and I got to let people know that he's got a couple books out there: Black Belt Leadership, and then Breakthrough, which is a great read, and I appreciate it so much. But one of the things that really jumped off the pages, I love these little quips that people get. A black belt is a white belt that never quit. And that sounds like persistence. Where did that come from? How did that?
Well, it's an adage within the martial arts industry, but I have to say that it really came present for me as I was teaching a multitude of students. In fact, I probably to date have over 1,800 students who have gotten their black belt with me.
Wow.
And when I think of all those students, I can think of possibly only 2 that when they came to me for the first time, they had every attribute necessary to be a successful black belt: strength, flexibility, coordination, tenacity, courage, all those things. And those 2 eventually, one got their 5th degree black belt with me, one their 2nd degree black belt with me. But there was another 1,798 that got it that didn't have all of those skills at the very beginning. Yeah. And those are the ones that probably inspired me the most, right? Yeah. Because they just kept showing up. And that's the adage: is a black belt is a white belt that never quits. So in my martial arts teaching and training, I always wanted to and still continue to use martial arts as a metaphor. So you can use those same lessons you learn in martial arts and apply them to your everyday life.
Yeah, that's really cool. I found over the years that tenacity a lot of times just shows up as perseverance, doesn't it?
Well, and quite honestly, it isn't, to use my example, it's not the people with the most talent that oftentimes have the greatest amount of success. It's oftentimes the people that are going through hardships that value, have a greater sense of value for what they're accomplishing as a result of overcoming challenge. And they're the ones that can really exceed. And also many times can be the best mentors and teachers because they understand the difficulty that others go through as well. They have a greater deal of empathy. And I think as a leader, that's important as well.
Yeah, certainly. What is one of the biggest lessons when did you start Taekwondo?
I started martial art training in September of 1973.
So you were like 3 years old then.
Yeah, right. No, I was actually 10 years old. The reason I remember it's actually September 13th. I remember that distinctly because it was my brother's 5th birthday. And I had to beg my mom to let me go to my first class. She relented.
Oh,
and,
wow.
It was obviously transformational for me, but no, that's the date. And yeah, I was 10 years old when I started. Kung Fu, the TV show, was very popular at the time. So that's what really sparked my interest in martial arts.
Yeah, for sure. So, as you compile all these lessons that you've taken in from not only training, but in the medical community, it's train one, do one, teach one, and you get you learn a lot from teaching. But if you roll that up into a ball and you look at your martial arts training, what is the biggest lesson that you have drawn from this that you could pass along?
Well, that's a long question there. There's an awful lot of lessons, but the one I would say at the root is there's a power inside each and every one of us. And when we access that power and that sense of self and that sense of confidence, and we combine it with the ability to give back, as you said before, now we become, I use the metaphor of the champion as well. And
Hmm.
that to me is what my instructor taught me from the very beginning is, I had success in the ring and all that kind of stuff, being a fighting champion, but he was always imparting upon us was the importance of becoming a champion in life.
Yeah.
Someone who could have a real powerful vision for what they wanted to create, someone who had the tenacity to move through obstacles, and then someone who could use those attributes to serve and serve in a profound way. So I think that in means of developing black belts and becoming a black belt has to do with not only empowering yourself, but then being able to give back to the world and help empower others.
All right. So tell us a little bit more about Taekwondo because, yeah, I mean, you gotta know a little bit about it, not only teach it, but you're the United States 1999 national champ, and so tell us about your sport and your love for the sport in a lot of ways.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Taekwondo is a Korean martial art. The word Taekwondo is literally translated as Tai means to kick with the foot, Kwan means to smash with the hand, and Do means martial art or way of morality. So it's an ancient Korean martial arts, been around for some 2,000 years. When I started in the early 70s, it was basically just a traditional martial art. And then into the 80s and making a debut in the 1988 Olympics, it
Hmm.
became an Olympic sport. So there's a sport aspect to it as well. And that's what in 1999, I won in the Olympic style, not Olympic. I wasn't a member of the
Yeah.
Olympics, but Olympic style Taekwondo. And
Hmm.
so really, and what's happened with Taekwondo around the world is it's not just become a sport, although it is, there's a competitive aspect to it, but it's really used as a way to help develop people's mind, body, and spirit. And you'll see a vast array of people that are able to practice Taekwondo, as young as 3, 4 years old, all the way to people. My oldest black belt, I believe, was 75 or 77 when he received his black belt with us. So there's a wide range of people that can earn a black belt, and also, it has those qualities and the lessons that you learn and the transformation that's made can impact people of all ages.
That's wonderful. So, of the lessons that you learned, which of those in Taekwondo translate to real life, everyday life, and leadership, and the qualities that we look for across the scope of grandchildren all the way up to champions?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, when I do my speaking and I talk about black belt leadership, I basically focus on 3 or 4 elements. And the first is the power of having a purposeful vision. So, in order to be successful in
Mm.
martial arts, and sometimes it's something that people find along the way. As I said before, some of the best black belts are those that weren't that great when they started, but you start to
Yeah.
develop a vision for what you want to create. You're aspiring to a vision of what that means to be a black belt, and that purposeful vision can be translated to any aspect of life, relationships,
Hmm.
career, your spiritual well-being, whatever that is. And so first and foremost, I talk about having a purposeful vision. The next is to be able to have what I call conscious persistence. So a lot of us, Jim, in
Hmm.
life are very persistent about things, right? In fact, we have habits that we form all the time, and I always joke that if you don't think that's true, think about the last time you left the office and you came home, and as you were driving up the driveway, you had no recollection of how you got home, right? Your mind was
Yeah.
somewhere else. You weren't really conscious and present, but what you learn in martial arts is you learn to have a conscious persistence. You need to learn to be in the present moment as you're practicing, and that
Hmm.
also goes into everyday life. The fourth thing is, and actually third and fourth are really a combination. It's the ability to take inspired action, to be able to have something inside of us that we want to share, we want to create, we want to make an impact in the world. And I combine that with compassionate service. So I really have found that the best leaders that I've ever been involved with, not only in martial arts, but corporately, in sports, have not only had a real drive and a sense of leadership to lead others, but they also had a compassion underneath. They wanted to do it to make an impact positively on those around. So those are the 3 or 4 aspects that I speak about, and the ones I think are the most profound, because I always say, someone can earn a black belt with me and maybe they stop practicing the physical aspects of martial arts, but it would be my hope that the lessons that they learned, they continue to use in their life, for years to come.
Yeah, that's awesome. It kind of plays into that 3 C's that you talked about in the book, which I
Yeah,
really I
yeah.
was able to grab a hold of those from an aviation perspective, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But what
All
are those
right.
3 C's that you talked about in the book?
Well, and as a point of origin, the 3 C's of creating breakthroughs is, in addition to my keynote speaking, I also do corporate board breaking experiences, and this is where I come into organizations and help not only their employees but their leaders use the metaphor of breaking a board to help them overcome their limiting beliefs and get really clear on the quote unquote breakthroughs that they want to experience in their
Hmm.
life, in their relationships, in their careers. And so these 3 C's are kind of the anchor for that. And the first thing is to clarify your vision. So again, many of
Uh-huh.
us are out there just bumping around and we don't really have a clear understanding of where we want to go. And I always say it's important to understand what we really want. I don't know about you, Jim, but when I work with people, when I speak, and when I am working with coaching clients, many times people are very comfortable talking about what they don't want. They
Yeah.
don't want to be overweight. They don't want to be, stressed. They don't want to be this, but it's hard for them to understand what they really want. And I'm a firm believer in what we focus on expands. So
Hmm.
if we focus on not being stressed, we're going to probably be stressed because that's what we're focusing on. I think it's also important in that first C in clarifying your vision is 2 other things. Is number one is being clear about why it's important to you, right? Simon Sinek's one of my
Yeah.
favorite authors. He has the book The Power of Why, and he talks about the inspiration that comes in a big why. And I couldn't agree with him more. And then also about how we can embody that even before we experience it. A person who's training in martial arts, they may not have the physical skills to be a black belt yet, but what they're doing is they're practicing the embodiment of it. And when we have a vision, we need to practice that as well before it ever comes to fruition. So that's the first C, which is to clarify your vision.
Yeah. Clarify.
Yeah. And so the second C is to create a plan, right? What do they say? A vision without action is merely a dream, right? So there's a
Yeah.
lot of us out there, and you probably come across people that do this all the time, and they're all enthusiastic about what they want to accomplish or what they want to create in their lives, but they don't have a plan. And the
Yeah.
difficulty with that is then sometimes that vision can just seem so big and overwhelming that we just don't take action. So I'm a firm believer of beginning with the end in mind, but then breaking it down into small chunks. And we do that in martial arts. We don't have someone come in as a white belt and then just focus, they don't have any steps in between before they get their black belt. They have a series of colored belts that they have to go through, right? So the same
Right.
thing can be applied in life. And then the
Hmm.
final one is to take consistent action. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that again, so many of us in American society in particular, you'll hear the idea of taking massive action. And I'm not necessarily negative toward that. I think that, if we went to the doctor and the doctor said, you have this impending medical emergency. If you don't start changing your habits, you might have to take massive action to change your diet
Yeah.
and, your wellness routine, et cetera. But most of
Yeah.
us jump out and we take massive action in the first week or so and we can't maintain it. And then pretty soon, all of a sudden we just peter out. And it's just what happens. I heard the other day that by the second Friday in January, most people have already given up on the New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
So
Quitting
the
day.
idea there is to take consistent action in those. Yeah, 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 but take that consistent action in small steps and build momentum, because as you're building
Yeah.
momentum, now you can expand the amount of time you exercise or the amount of time you meditate or read or whatever you choose to be. And now it becomes part of your lifestyle. So those are the three
Yeah.
C's in a nutshell.
Yeah, 27 days in a row. And when I look at it, I looked at it from, like I said, an aviation perspective. Clarify a destination.
Yeah.
Like, where are you going? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to end up? And then create a plan. So if you're going to fly from here to Chicago, from Boise to Chicago, you might not want to go through Philly. And so you better have a plan or a map or something where you're using something to chart out your trip. And then finally, consistency was just always just movement in the right direction. And that's exactly what you're talking about, is a little
That's
bit
right.
of movement created habitually in every day, which is just a fantastic
Yeah.
way to say, listen, it doesn't matter what your goal is. If you employ these three C's that Chris tells you, you're going to get where you want to go eventually.
That's right. That's right. And
Yeah.
if I may add,
So,
and at the risk of using an aviation metaphor in front of a pilot, I literally just used this with a group of students that are getting ready to test for black belt in the upcoming months with me this last Saturday. Is that when you have an intention and you're taking that consistent action, you always need to be conscious of evaluating where you're at, because, like if
mm,
you were to take off from a flight, you want to go from Los Angeles to Hawaii, and your flight path is off 1% from the beginning. In 5 hours, you're not going to
yeah.
end up in Oahu, right, Jim? You're going to end up somewhere in the Pacific
Yeah.
Ocean. And so when
Right.
you're taking those steps, we have to continuously course correct. Know that it's not going to
Hmm.
be something where you just plug and go. You have to have that conscious persistence. And, like I talk a lot about, doing weekly reviews. Where are you at? If on your plan, just take the time to see where you're at. Are you still on pace? Because it takes very little to get us off track. But when that continues, that
Yeah.
1% turns into 5%, 10%, et cetera. And pretty soon we wake up one day and we're not
Yeah.
anywhere close to where we want to be.
Right. Error increases with distance. And there's forces out there that are going to try and push you off your path, whether it be wind or gravity or magnetic
Mhm.
deviation or all the things that are going to try to alter your course. You have to make little continual corrections so that you know that you're staying on that concentric path towards your destination. So,
Right.
great point, man.
Well,
Great
and that
coaching for
that
your
being
students,
said, Jim,
too.
one of the things that right, when I'm coaching people, when I'm talking to my students, or whether it's life coaching and leadership coaching students or clients, one of the things I talk about is this idea of making sure that they identify in a healthy way the obstacles as they're starting their journey. And I'm not to say, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's going to be so terrible, I can't get through it. It's like, no, what are the things that generally pop up when I'm on my way, and all of a sudden there it goes. It popped up, and it happens all the time. And in the past, it got me off course. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to recognize it, and I'm already going to have a plan for how to deal with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now when it shows up, it's like,
Expect the
yep, here it
problem.
is again. I'm
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but so
I
many of us, and
recognize you,
I've
and
been
it didn't
saying,
work out well last time.
that's right.
Right on. Right on. Perfect. So you talk all about having a purposeful vision in the book, and as I look back, I thought that was so. It's not intriguing; it's descriptive. It is. It is. It encompasses um, not only knowing where you are, but where you're going and how you're going to get there. Talk to us about a purposeful vision. What do you mean by that? Uh-huh. Mm, mhm. Right. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Right on. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. There's some other keywords that when you talk about moving forward, you talk again, and I'm going to go back to the book because there were so many parts of it there, but conscious persistence. So when you talk about conscious persistence, it's different than resilience. It's different. It's so intentional. Um, and I think that gets to the root of it of conscious persistence, doesn't it? Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Uh-huh. Oh. Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. Wow. Wow. That's awesome. Mm. Well, and that, yeah, that type of inspired action is what our youth and our community across all of America needs to look at today. It's not just showing up; it's showing up, knowing where you're going, charting a path to get there, and then get keep doing what you're doing, which is choosing to do the right thing on a regular to increasing basis. Yeah. Mm. Heck yeah. Oh, the world would be a lot more awesome place. So, a lot of the folks who listen to this podcast are small business people, and one of the things that we talk about a lot is the obstacles that we, as entrepreneurs, have overcome. And running your own gig is not for the meek. And you started a long time ago. What was one of the biggest challenges or the biggest obstacles that you overcame in running a martial arts school? Yeah, yeah, uh-huh. Mm. Yeah, yeah, wow, yeah, For sure. Yeah. 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 Awesome. It sounds like that was Chris's one of Chris's breakthrough moments. For sure. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Certainly. Well, Chris, you have a heart for youth. I can see it in you. And so I want you to look at your, I don't know, 12-year-old self, 15-year-old self, and I want you to tell some of our folks who are listening, because we got a large audience that's certainly younger than I am. And when I talk to them, they love it when people impart some of the wisdom that we've earned. And so what breakthrough advice would you give to some of these young folks who are watching today? Hmm. Wow. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Certainly. Well, that is great wisdom. Chris, thanks for joining us on the Grampian today. We appreciate the lessons in perseverance and intentional activity that you bring to the table. You're a wonderful, wonderful mentor, and thanks for joining us on the Grampian. All right, Grampian Nation, hope you learned something today about Taekwondo and perseverance. Hey, join us next week. Don't forget to listen and subscribe. This is Jim, and I am out. When you get an opportunity, subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcast.